Welcome back. Today's video is actually a little bit different than most of my other videos because most of my other videos, I'm coding. In today's video, we're not actually going to be doing any coding. So a series that I'm going to start picking up again is the SEC series, right? Obviously, we know at this point the SEC has a treasure trove of data. But something that I think initially when I started doing this series was I didn't realize just how much they actually have available, and where it can lead you and where those resources that it's leading to you, how much data they have available. To be completely honest, when I started doing this and I started realizing what I was coming across, I was really actually kind of surprised because I said, my God, normally you have to pay pretty decent money to get this information. I mean, maybe not decent amount of money, but usually if you want it, like you've got to work really hard to find it. It's not easy. And if you do find it, you only get like one part and you don't get everything, right? This one's really different. And so as much as I want to kind of just jump right into the parsing, I really think it's important to kind of just take a step back and understand like what we all have access to, and hopefully give us a little bit more context about if I need to answer a particular question, the data actually might be there, and it actually might be there in a really easy to use format. And so I'd rather do that than have to go reinvent the wheel. And so what I'm going to talk about is interesting directories that I came across as I was going through this process of parsing SEC filings. And so what we're going to be talking about in upcoming series is how to parse XBRL filings. And basically those types of filings, they have an XML document along with some other documents in it. And inside those documents is basically just a bunch of XML code. The thing is, if you look in that XML code, you will find that it basically has every single value that you will see in a financial statement with the exact value, the account name, the precision of how far it's supposed to go out, whether it's a credit or debit, and so on and so on. Now, to give you just a little bit of a tease behind it, I'll show you kind of just what you basically have access to. So each one of these can be these massive files that have just a bunch of information. It could be something as simple as here's a line item. Here's the balance of that particular line item, what type of item it is. So is it like a monetary item? Is it, whatever. And I'm going to zoom this in a little bit. The problem is there's just so much here. It's really easy to get overwhelmed and get lost. And so what I've been doing probably the last, I would say few months when I've had time, is trying to go about documenting / standardizing how we interact with this, because there is some documentation out there, but it just gives you really just a small piece of the pie. It doesn't really give you this full context sometimes about just how this information is even populated to begin with. Like everything has to talk to each other with these particular interactive document filings. And how they talk to each other is they use these filings that basically point to other files and resources. And if you know where they're pointing to and you explore those resources, you'll come across and realize like, wait a minute, there's a whole bunch of information here that's basically just sitting there. So you'll normally see something called, whatever the ticker symbol is, that particular period, and then _cal. That's short for calculations. That is the calculation file, or at least the XML file that is used for calculations. This will basically tell you the location of every line item in there and the order in which it needs to appear in the balance sheet or whatever financial statement you're working with. So not only is it telling you where the information is, but it's also telling you how to calculate that particular metric. So this one's really important if you're trying to recreate visually how the balance sheet looks or whatever financial statement you're looking with. So there's your calculation one. You then have a definition one. Well, this basically defines what that particular item is. And so it will, I think this is one that it will show you. I can't remember exactly, but it will actually redirect you in some cases to another file that will give you the entire definition for that line item from its accounting perspective. On top of that, they have labels. So they'll tell you what it's supposed to look like on that particular financial statement. And again, they will give you links and they'll give you IDs. So that way you can easily match it all up, semi-easily. You have to be a little bit creative, but it's easy, at least from what I've been able to kind of hinder. And basically what you can do is you can basically parse the entire thing with each line item. You can get the ID, the label, and so on and so on. And then you can get the actual value. So everything you need is right there. And this is like in a standardized parsing format. And it's not even that crazy amount of code, but it's like, it's all there. So that's why all these files are so important, because they're basically going into this HTML file, which has all the information. And it will give you the ID. It will tell you what unit of measure it's in, and so on and so on. And it's all right there. You just have to parse it. But it's the strategy behind the parsing that's important. Now, by giving you that little tease, I think it's also important to understand that those files, in some cases, are going to point to other resources that potentially you could use. So, for example, when I started going through this series and just parsing it, I realized like, well, that's kind of interesting. Like, what are all these like xbrl.sec.gov links going to? That's kind of odd, right? So I started going to some of them and I just, did a little bit of exploring. So I've done some, not all, but I've been kind of surprised, to be honest. So in some cases, these links will take you to a directory. And inside this directory are basically a bunch of folders. Usually it's organized by year. And in some cases, you might have up to the current year. Other times you might not. But if you go into these folders, you'll find that there's a whole bunch of other files. And you'll kind of go like, well, that's odd. I wonder what's all in here. Well, depending on the directory that you're at, it will basically give you a list, or in some cases, all the information that the SEC uses to recreate any type of filing that's out there. So they'll give you account names, they'll give you, line item names, they'll give you the IDs, everything. They'll tell you what resources they're using in order to get that, and just a whole bunch of information. So the one I'm currently in is for this invest directory. So I haven't done too much in this one, but from what I've been able to tell, it's just basically a bunch of different links to basically like different investment instruments and stuff like that. And so these are used for like different investment, I guess, securities, and maybe from like a financial perspective, like how you report on them. Again, I haven't done too much into this one, but it's an interesting one because I'm like, well, this is interesting. Like, there's a bunch of stuff in here, and it's like, well, this is all regulation information. Like, what does that mean? And how is this being used in other filings? And it's like, okay, and it looks like it's giving us like every single one that's potentially there. Well, that's odd. So that was one of my first directories I came across. And initially I'm like, well, it seems like it's good, especially like if you need information on investment, securities. And then I started going into some other ones. And the next one I went into was this SIC one. Now, this is actually used for standard industry classification. Well, what they give you with this one is every single SIC code. So basically, they will give you every single SIC code along with the name of that standard industry classification. And again, they will tell you where it's used. So for example, this might actually be a valid link. I don't know. I haven't tried it, to be honest, but we'll see in a second. But they'll basically say, okay, here are all my SIC codes and stuff like that. And then on top of that, they'll just have other resources that potentially can tell you like where it might be used or something like that. So it's a really interesting piece of information because, to be honest, like this is going to be 10 times easier to parse than this one. It's not to say you can't parse it, but again, this seems to be in a more standardized format. It seems to be something that, again, you can leverage if you needed to. So there was that one. And then I think there's like another XML one, if I remember correctly. It's basically just like kind of repeating it, but it might be like in a different type of formatting or something like that. And again, it's just kind of all right there. Use it to your heart's desire and go have fun with it, right? This is, I mean, but yeah, it was really interesting looking at this one because I know, well, that's great. Like now I know every SIC code they're potentially using. So now I know that I just have to use this little set and I should have everything. And then they'll give you the SIC codes over time. So not only do you have 2020, but you can look back to 2011 and 2010 and so on and so on. Usually the index.htm one doesn't really do anything. And usually if you're at the base level, it will just take you back to the SEC page. That's at least from what I've noticed so far, but I mean, I could be wrong. And then this one, I'm just going to start deleting some of these because it's just going to be a little bit easier. So hold on 1 second. Okay, so the next one is the country one, right? So the country one's a little bit interesting too, because if you need country specific information, they have it by year. So they'll give you every single country ID. So basically something like this. And then they'll also point to a link of where that particular one exists, but they'll give you the actual label if you need it. So again, you now have a structured resource that has all that information that you could possibly need. And then I think there was another one. Is it this one? One of them had a little bit more information in it. Usually with these kind of more, I would say, standardized codes, they're relatively limited, but they're still useful because naturally, like, if I don't have to go look for that information and I can just know I can point to that directory and I'll be good, sometimes that's easier to work with than having to go collect that information myself. Additionally, each one of these directories usually has a zip file part of it. So that zip file will have everything you need in order to get it. So very useful when it comes to getting certain information that you might possibly need down the road, at least from my experience. And then sometimes they'll have this like little doc folder, and inside these doc folders, it can kind of vary what's inside of it. But from what I've been able to tell, like, I want to say it's like basically like an Excel file. At least that's what I think it's supposed to be. I honestly don't know. I haven't had enough time to look too in depth with this stuff, but I noticed that some of the directories will have these basically these doc files that, you know, make me suspect it's basically like an Excel file, but somehow in like XML format. So they're kind of interesting. I think this one's like a country compare, so 2011 to 2012. So that might be something too, where it's like, okay, if I have to compare to like 1 year versus the next year, it seems like that information might be available to us. Very, you know, it was very interesting, right? So I mean, at least that's kind of what I was thinking. And then sometimes I'll have a draft folder. This one, again, it really kind of just depends, but sometimes there's information in here, sometimes there's not. But again, you're just having a list of all the information like in a single location that is pretty easy to parse. I mean, I've parsed some of these. I'm like, wow, this is like not hard at all. Like it's kind of scary how easy it is. But yeah, so this one is the country one. So if you need anything related to country information, it's just sec.gov/, what is it, country. Then they also have industry classification, another version of NAICS. This one only went to 2017. There's a beast of a file in here though, because this basically gives you every name, and then they'll actually give you, I believe, the code in this file as well. So I think the codes here are something like that. But it's basically like every industry code again. But this is the different standardized one. So that was kind of an interesting one because, again, if you're searching or you're trying to do something like that, to have kind of like a master list that you know ideally should return the results, it's kind of good to have something like that because it will make ideally the parsing process a little bit easier. And then sometimes they'll have like these order components, which again, it seems like it's defining the order in which sometimes they might appear or something like that. So very useful information. And I think some of these, yeah, so these are like the actual codes or something like that. So very interesting stuff. I wish I had enough time to go through it all, but the problem is there's just so much, you know, you don't necessarily get a bunch of time to do it. They also have a directory that is completely related to currency codes. So if you need anything related to currency codes, that's all right there. You don't have to look it up or anything like that. It's all right there. They'll give you like the country label. They'll give you a whole bunch of other stuff that's just right there. You don't have to look at it anymore. It's, again, very, very useful. Very useful if you're trying to just get your like master little data set. Normally, you can see the size on the side. So obviously, I usually go for the bigger ones because that's usually where the bulk of the information is. Sometimes, though, the smaller ones do have worthwhile information. They might have like a link to somewhere else or something like that. So don't necessarily rule them out. It's just usually when I'm going through this process, like I'm going to start with the larger one first, and then from there, I might go to a different one or something like that. So these are basically like all just currency codes. So if you need access to it, like you have pretty much everything you need and it's all right there. And again, like it's going back historically. So it's giving you back till 2010, which I think is pretty cool. And then I guess like these comparison ones too, that I guess is supposed to represent like an Excel file. I think I'm not like entirely sure, but you can, I guess, compare them if you needed to as well. So that's the currency code one. Additionally, we have a exchange directory. So this is a interesting one as well. This one basically gives you a list of every single market exchange in the world, basically. So I guess there's this master list that they keep, to put it nicely, and it's just every single exchange that's there. So this was kind of interesting. I personally I thought this one was one of my more interesting ones, just because I'm trying to find the one that gives you like the actual like label itself, and I feel like I just clicked the same one. It's what I tend to do. Maybe it's this one. One of them is like a beast of a file, and it's like you go into it. Oh yeah, this one. So this is the exchange one, and basically they give you, for every country, the name of the exchange, from what I've been able to tell. I don't know if they necessarily give you a link, but I know they'll give you like the name of it. And, there might be a link in another one of the files. I honestly wouldn't be surprised, because to me, that would make more sense. But then it's interesting too, because like they'll have like very specific ones, which is weird, because it's like, honestly, I don't know exactly what all this will mean sometimes, but the information seems to be there. It's kind of just saying like, okay, what information do I need, and like how much of it is important to necessarily what I'm doing. So this is kind of interesting. I would say if you get an opportunity, I would look at it. I think there's some useful information. You might want to see if one of these other files is taking you to, maybe a link or something like that. It might be quite useful to look at that. But again, they'll give you like the entire historical data as well. So very interesting stuff. They have like these other comparison ones too. Some of these are very large though, so it will take a little bit to load. So don't be surprised if you're sitting sometimes just waiting for it to load. But I think that's worth the wait. So that one's there. And then they have entity information. So this will come in handy when we're parsing. Oh, is that the one that's... Sorry. That's also another reminder. You have to be very specific about the URL that you type in. It will not work if you don't type in the right URL. But to go back to the exchange one, yeah, I think this is just another like comparison one. Yeah. This is entity information. So this one will have basically, in any type of filing, they'll have certain tags that are related to document entity information. And so here is really useful because it will give you every possible one that it could be. And so it will tell you basically what it is. And in some cases, it will tell you what it means, and they'll give you the label for it. So like right here, you can see entity, address, city, or town. So it's basically like a master list of all the possible tags that it could potentially be, what the label should be. And then I think in a different filing or something like that, they'll give you like something else related to it. But these ones are really useful when it comes to parsing, because basically that's your master list. And if you know, you basically can loop through that master list and you say, well, if it's there, then I know it's what it needs to be. So that's the entity information. So that's definitely pretty useful. And then this is the state of province directory. This is an interesting one too. Not a ton of information, but it's nice to kind of know it's there. Basically, it's just a giant list of all the states and all their provinces. So this is kind of interesting. Again, I haven't looked too much into it, but they'll basically give you every state name, and then they'll even give you some for Canada, if I remember correctly. I think it's Canada's in here too. It's really odd. I was like, well, that's very specific. I wonder why Canada, deserved such a spot, but whatever. And then, yeah, so nothing super crazy, but again, it's nice to know it's there if you need like a master state list or something like that. Definitely useful and, worthwhile. But that's your basically state of province. Ooh, this is the beast. Yeah, I don't even know where to begin with this one. So basically, the FASB basically writes the accounting rules, right? And so from what I've been able to tell, this is basically just a master list of every single accounting rule out there by year. To be completely honest, every time I go in these files, I get lost down a rabbit hole, because just keep in mind, every year we'll have something similar to this. And then one is literally just a list of URLs, like a single list of URLs that will direct you to another XML file. And each one of these XML files will then contain a master glob of information. So sometimes they'll have like this meta information, they'll have like just everything. I mean, and it's all there and it's like all defined. And I don't even know where to begin with this one, because there's just so much. Like, this is just one directory and it's everything. And so I've gone into one of these with the fear of life, and it's just every single account that I don't even know sometimes like what it all means, because I didn't go to, like, I took an accounting class, but I didn't like go crazy with accounting. But it's everything. And then it's like the order sometimes in which it's calculated, the order in which it appears in like a statement. Anything you basically need to recreate your financial statements, it's all in these files. And it's just a master list of everything. And some of these go into the megabytes. Like, look at this. You're talking megabytes of just data, of list, of potentially of information. Megabytes isn't huge, but like, I look at this and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, how is anybody supposed to understand any of this? I get so lost when I look at it, because it's just overwhelming. Like, you don't know where to begin. And I don't even know sometimes. Like, it's just so much information and it's all right there. And you have every data set they've had going back the last 10 years, and you can easily parse it. And then some of these, they'll give you an entire zip file or something like that. It's just a ton of information. These are like some of the calculation ones. So they'll tell you like how you need to calculate certain line items or whatever it is. They'll tell you the weight. They'll tell you whether it's a debit or a credit, and just everything. Everything's there, and it's all organized in like a systematic fashion. So this is a great one. Honestly, there's a lot here. I don't even know where to begin with it half the time, though, because there is just so much there, and I don't know half of what these codes mean. So part of it is like, if you have domain knowledge, I think that's obviously going to be a little bit beneficial. But, just looking back at this, you're talking back to 2011, you have a list of all this. So yeah, I don't know. It was just a little bit overwhelming. So the FASB one is definitely like, I would say the monster one. It's everything. I mean, it's just literally everything. Additionally, when I started going through certain processes, something I know that some people have kind of asked is like, oh, well, what about like CIK numbers, right? So the central index key, because ultimately, like if you have that, like super useful, right? Well, I did a little bit of digging and there's a link somewhere. It's very hidden, like 10 pages in, and it's at the bottom of the page in the small font. There's these links. And if you click these links, they'll give you a list of every single CIK number and the company name. So they'll give you every single company, and their CIK number, a master list. So there's that one, but there's 3 of them. One will give you the ticker symbol and then the CIK number. So not only do you have the name in the CIK number, if you have the CIK number, you inherently have the ticker symbol. On top of that, there's a master JSON list. The master JSON list has, again, the CIK number, the ticker symbol, and then the name of the company. You probably just want to parse the JSON one. But again, every single one, supposedly. I haven't validated it, so I can't 100% say for sure, but I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of information that's just sitting there. So these are great. They don't advertise them anywhere. Well, they advertise them, but again, it's really hidden in the website. But basically, if you need a master list of all the CIK numbers along with their ticker symbol and their their name, you basically have it. So that was kind of interesting when I was doing this one. And then this other one is quite interesting too. So there is a directory that's in JSON format of every single data catalog that the SEC makes public with their links. So this is, again, a master list of every data set that the SEC offers with direct links to the download version of it. Now, when I did this one, again, there's a lot. Some are historical. So for example, if you need every registered investment advisor by month, they have it. There's a lot of those, just an FYI. There's an interesting one though, once I get to it. And usually there's a description, so they'll tell you kind of what's in it. Broker dealers, so they'll give you a list of all of those. Those are quite interesting. On top of that, God, I hate these ones sometimes. They have broker dealers. They have failed to deliver data. So they have everything like that. There's a lot of failed to deliver data, and they are massive files. So do not be surprised. They have registered municipal advisors. They have economic risk. Where is it? Economic risk and analysis. I think so. These are basically data sets by quarter, it appears. So again, they update these every quarter. So if you just want like a master list of financial statement and notes, there you go. And then they have XBRL filings. Well, this is obviously, or is this the XBRL one? No. Alternative trading systems at list. So, I think I remember this one. I'll show you it. This is an odd one, if I remember correctly. One of these I went through and I was like, well, that's an interesting one. I don't know if that's... One of these is like very interesting because it actually gives you the CUSIP, if I remember correctly. I'll download it and I'll open it. Yeah, so I guess like this is just a PDF of all the alternative trading systems. So that's interesting, I guess, if you needed a data set on that. Frequently requests, oh, those are the, I remember that category. Crowdfunding offerings data set. So again, by quarter, I guess they release a giant data set of just the crowdfunding offerings. Like those are huge though. So FYI, they are a little bit large to say the least. Financial statements data set. So this one again is kind of useful if you need like a master data set. They also have mutual fund prospectus, risk, return summary data sets, again, by quarter. And I think it's pretty much for like every mutual fund. They have a regulations data set. They have Form D data sets, money market fund information. And once we get closer to the bottom, it starts getting less of these long lists, and it's actually just a bunch of little lists. But even those ones contain some interesting ones. Where is this? Market structure data, metric individual security and exchange. These data sets provide metrics for each security type and exchange. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. I wouldn't have guessed that one, but okay. So I don't know. I mean, it could be every single security. I don't know. Huh. That's crazy. That's really crazy if that's everything. Oh, individual security partitioned by exchange. Wow. Yeah, see, sometimes like I even look at this and I still get like overwhelmed. Conditional, cancel, and trade distributions. So there's trade data. Metrics, individual securities. Wow. Data sets metrics for more than 4,800 securities, apparently by quarter. Oh, these are those weird ones. Commission votes and stuff like that. Business development company report. I've never looked at these ones, so I don't honestly know what this is. I mean, I guess I could just read the description. That just tells you it's available in Excel format. This report provides basic information for all entities with an active filing status and that have been issued an 814 reporting number. Okay. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure it is useful. Oh, wow. It's all their freaking addresses. Wow. Huh. Well, that's kind of neat. File number. Well, if you have a link, oh, I wonder if you have like a link to the file. Huh. All right. Don't know, but that seems interesting. Closed end information. Car series. Where else? Administrative proceedings. So if you want to hear what the SEC is talking about, that's available too if you want. That was an interesting one, to be honest. But and then where is it? I know there's one in here too. Commission opinion orders. Oh. Well, one of these, of course I can't find it, will take you to something called the Federal Register. Well, I don't know if you've ever used this, but the Federal Register has an API. Who would have guessed, right? Well, this API is quite interesting because if you use it, you can search pretty much every document that they have available. I'll be honest, like I was a little bit, this is like another overwhelming one that I just don't even know where to begin. But to kind of give you an idea, like it basically gives you a giant list of all the documents that you're searching for. Now, this one, I didn't really do anything fancy because I didn't put anything in there. But you can do things like search by, agency or something like that. So it's quite interesting, to be honest. Like when you start looking at it, there's a JSON URL. And so you can do something where you can do like business and industry, right? And then you can do like accountants. I don't know, something. And then they'll give you a link with a URL. And if you go to this wonderful URL, you will be a little bit surprised of what you get. It will basically give you all the document content in some cases. And with those, it will give you the actual content that was inside of it. And then they'll give you other links to different documents that potentially it was used in, keywords, all sorts of different stuff. And then you can also get a full text version of that particular document if you so choose. So normally you can just do a raw text URL. And there you have everything. So at some point, I will be doing a series on this, but this is just such a beast. I don't even know where to begin with this one. I haven't even figured out the SEC one, so this is going to be a while before I get to this one. But there's just so much with this entire, I don't even know where to begin because there's just so much. There really is just so much. And every time I go here, I just like get lost because I'm just so shocked about how much data you can easily get. But that's basically what I wanted to do in this video was just, I know we're going to start going into the SEC more, but I think it's also important that you understand kind of like what you actually have disposal of. And so part of it is like, I want to make that information available so that way you don't have to go look for it and, just stumble across it like I did. So I'll be doing, different things down the road to hopefully better, help make it more aware to people like how to use this, how to get information. And then also, once we do start parsing our XBRL filings, this will kind of all, I think, put everything into perspective. But I know a lot of people, they're constantly asking like, hey, where can I get this or where can I get that? These are obviously great resources. And I'll be making sure to put a list of them in a new repository that I started recently. I will show you. So at some point, I am going to start basically from scratch a little bit. And we're going to build a Python library that will hopefully make the process of parsing SEC filings, just querying the SEC database, and basically just making sense out of everything that I've been showing you the last like 20 minutes, a little bit more easier. Because right now it's so easy to get lost and there's no information out there and it's really hard. You have to like search a bunch, you got to do this, you got to do that. I really want to make that process more consistent and easier. And so part of why I'm even kind of revamping this series is because I know it's been a popular one and I know that a lot of people have been using it and I want people to continue using it because I think this obviously can make your life 10 times easier depending on the type of job you have. But also there's just so much information there and we want to be able to make sure we can access this information in an easy fashion. And so part of that means standardizing how we get it, how we clean it, and also standardizing how we make these types of requests. And so ideally what it's going to look like, it's a very empty repository right now, like very, very empty. It's not that one. I think it's this one. I'm going to be doing the whole standardization of querying. So I want you to be able to just call a method and say, hey, I want to just query by a filing type. Great. I can do that. So helping you where you don't have to go like, well, is it that endpoint or is it this endpoint or that endpoint or which parameters go in this one because they don't tell you anything and I can't remember since last time. Like, let's just end all of that. Let's just try to make it standard and, make it easier to work with all this because I think it will make our lives easier And so things like this, I want to make just interacting with it easier and no longer guessing, because I think it will make all of our lives easier. And then hopefully at some point, I do want to see if we can hopefully standardize parsing some of these filings too, because there's a treasure trove of information in there. But how many minutes have I taken? 40 minutes. Good Lord. I was not expecting it to be that long. So I'm going to let you go. If you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comments below. Other than that, in our next video, we will start parsing our XBRL filings. So till then, we will chat soon.